Well, good evening. My name is Jennifer Marshall, and I'm the Vice President for the Institute for Family, Community, and Opportunity here at the Heritage Foundation. And it is our great pleasure this evening to welcome you to a showing of the Comeback series, actually several selections from the Comeback series, that features the work of Bob Woodson and many of the organizations that he has cultivated over the years across the country through the Center for Neighborhood Enterprise. And this is a project that has been launched and housed at Opportunity Lives. We're very pleased to have John Hart with us here this evening, and for their documentation of much of the good work that is going on across this country to really transform lives. We work quite a bit here at the Heritage Foundation to change the incentive structure of public policy so that it is working with and alongside these kinds of organizations that understand that human dignity is very much shaped by the opportunity to work, by the opportunity to be restored in relationships, most particularly in the family, but rebuilding communities and so on. And the groups that Bob has been working with for years and that I've had the pleasure of visiting over the years with him, over about a dozen years of friendship with Bob, are just doing phenomenal work to restore those relationships and bring health and healing to addicts, to the homeless, to those returning from prison and reentering society. And the film you're about to see, the episodes that you're about to see from the Comeback series, tell that in a very vivid way. So we're going to watch about 5 of these. They're strung together in about a 50-minute segment. And then Bob Woodson and I are going to have a little bit of a conversation for him to make some observations about what has brought about the success of these institutions and how much of a difference they make in the communities that they're present in. So without further ado, we'll welcome the film.
Today, I paid my fines for my parole, $778, $76.
This is all your parole.
These are all my parole fines for supervision, all my fees and everything.
Does this mean you're done?
We were sitting at breakfast.
That's really good. So this is like your freedom certificate.
This is my freedom certificate. I just happen to have it with me.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's it, balance due, 0. I owe nothing
That's really cool.
after a life of crime and drug addiction. When I walked into that courtroom, they shackle you. I hadn't shaved in a couple of weeks. Looking bad, looking broken. When I walked in, I saw my wife. She wasn't my wife anymore. She had already divorced me in the midst of all this stuff. And so why she was there, I have no idea. But, well, she still loved me. We had kids together. She still loved me. He sentenced me to 2 years. He dropped the gavel. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my life is over. That was it. I was done. I cried. I just walked out of the courtroom. They took me downstairs. They march you on a bus, and then you take this ride. You take this ride down the freeway. And there's a noise that you never forget. When the bus drives in, and the gate shuts and it's real slow. And when that gate hits the other side, it makes this noise. And it's this. I'm the youngest of 9, so I was kind of left to fend with my brother for ourselves. My parents, they did drink a lot. They would come home and tear the house up. My brother pretty much took care of me. He was a hippie in the 70s. I used to tell on him for smoking pot. I was in 4th grade, and I had stayed home sick from school, and he had come downstairs. He goes, I know you're not sick. And he goes, I'm going to tell on you. He lived in the attic, and I went up there, and there was this glass jar with a bowl on it and a tube, and if you're going to tell on me, you should know what you're telling on me for. And I smoked reefer for the first time in 4th grade. It kind of just snowballed. Started doing LSD, then I started selling it. I started freebasing and realized that I loved it. By the time I was 21, I had been to treatment a couple of times. Within 6 months, I was full-on junkie again. I met the girl that I married, the mother of Riley and Maddie. I hid it from her until I disappeared for like 3 days, and she didn't even see it coming. She was a nervous wreck.
My desire in my heart is to help people, so when I see the guy that I married hurt, he just hurt so bad. And he would cry and be like, I am so sorry. You don't deserve this. Why don't you just leave me? And then it would just tear me apart.
I'm just abandoning them every chance I get. I'm taking my paychecks. I'm not coming home.
I could never understand what about this drug, what about it makes you walk away from your wife and children?
I come home Sunday night broke, no money, no diapers, no formula, no money for bills or food, and would face the how could you do that? And I'm going into treatment, I'm doing a week, and I'm like, oh, I'm fixed, yeah, I don't need treatment no more. And I'd stay sober for a couple weeks, and this was the track record. It went on for 10 years. My wife stuck with me for 10 years.
Rock bottom was probably when he ended up doing time and went to jail. And that's when I finally had gotten out of my mom's house, lived on my own, was working, paying my own bills, and moving on. I was done.
Got in enough trouble to see a judge again, and there was no, I can't give you any more chances, Mr. Bradford. We have to incarcerate you, and hopefully that will be what you need. Good luck to you. And that was that. And so I went to prison. My wife divorced me. I came out. I'm getting high again, but I'm not just getting high a little bit. We're bordering on overdose just about every day. Every time where your mind's a little bit clear, we haven't gotten high in a few hours, you're thinking about the kids that are at home in their bed, missing their dad. That's crazy. And so you dull it. And it's a cycle. Inside you pray. You're like, I want to live. And then the thoughts kick in, how do I end this? But you're too much of a coward to end it. Because you were too much of a coward to walk away, so you can't end it because you don't know how. And when you're ready, God sends people. I pulled up in my mom's driveway, and generally the drill was pull up in the driveway and she's not letting you in the house. I had robbed her many occasions. I walked up on the porch and it's dark, and she had the door open, which was very unusual. And she brought the phone to me. Hey, he's like, oh, we should get together and talk. And I'm like, all right, man. I'm like, I'll call you this week. And he's just like, we should talk tonight. And I'm like, I don't have any gas. He's just like, I'll come to you. I'm like, I don't have anything to say. He goes, that's okay, you can listen. And that was it. He showed up. We talked for hours. Heart and love and tears, and we cried together and we laughed together. And for the first time ever, there was some man
that didn't want anything from me, but to see me get healthy. And I felt that.
Greg knew that he needed something supernatural in his life. He'd been through all the programs.
He just sewed into me every day. We broke bread together. We ate lunch together. He would drop me off. And when I got paid at the end of the week, he would give the money to my mom.
I took a risk bringing Greg on and letting him work with me.
This transformation thing way inside, it's a hard thing. So it's a condition, a hard condition.
I heard people telling me, hey, you know what? You don't know how many times he's done this. I heard that. I did it in faith, and faith and risk go hand in hand.
I just focused and said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to do drugs. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to let people down. God's going to send a man to do the work. Because God's not going to come down here and hug me. So that I could be set free from the spirit of addiction and this bondage, these chains that held me down for my entire life.
We just had our 3rd year anniversary of being remarried again, and this life now with him is, I can't even describe.
I have my children back in my life. Every day I get to see my kids.
I had no trust in him. I wouldn't even turn my back on him in a room. And now I trust him more than any human being, like, on the face of the earth.
Every day, I thank God for that man.
Government programs can't change lives, and it can change habits, it can change addictions maybe.
Because I wasn't worth saving as far as I was concerned, but every single person, and that's why we do what we do here. Because every single person is worth saving. Every single one. There's no one that's not worth saving. Not one.
I came from a place where people getting shot was the norm, and poverty was the norm, and people not having shoes sometimes to a person that owns a business and able to bless other people. It just shows me repetitively that anything is possible.
They're looking for hope. They're looking for a change. There are people that don't know any other life because it's been passed down from grandparents to parents to children.
And instead of people running from it, we should be running to it. Nobody is willing to take a risk to bring a solution. And I know what the solution is.
Back in 1924, when this building was built, they thought they were building a school building. Little did they realize that they would actually be building a church that would house a treatment center for people that were homeless and addicted to drugs.
This is where we're thinking about actually housing the homeless, but you can see that it's going to take a lot of work. So you don't have to live this life no more. Come on, you don't have to live under this bridge no more. Come on, you don't have to be beat by your husband no more. You can come here, okay, and you can get the love and the attention and the treatment that you need properly. They're going to know that they're coming to get loved. It's not going to be just a place to bed down. It's going to be a place to come get loved and a place to get on their feet, because they're going to work with us to get us back to being productive members of society, paying our taxes, living in a house, having a family. That's the American dream. The dream is this. I know where I came from. I know that had maybe there been something like this for me to go to in the area, maybe, just maybe I could have got cleaned up and helped a lot earlier.
We're a society gone chaotic. We're a society gone chaotic. Now, how do we get it back? When everything over circuits, it shuts down. No electricity, no power. So you have to go down into the basement and find the electrical box and reset the button. We need to reset society.
We have created a separate society, totally detached from personal responsibility. The young males are growing up without any parental influence, particularly fathers, in their lives. There's not a culture of discipline. And if you grow up without it, then it just escalates.
children raising children, dysfunctionalness, breeding dysfunctionalness.
When people feel there's an absence of content and meaning in their lives, these get acted out.
He's producing babies, but he's not fathering them. He's in relationships, but he'll never become a husband. It is a tragedy that a young girl will make love and won't protect herself. And some of them plan for it.
They're planning their whole life around a whole set of entitlements that they are keenly aware of.
And when you sit down and talk with them, they have no earthly understanding why.
Social policies of the 60s, accompanied by moral deregulation. It was a lethal cocktail. And their sole purpose was to recruit people away from the work economy into the welfare economy. So you saw a dramatic increase in the number of people leaving families for welfare. Someone once said that if you condition someone to enter into the back door, even if there isn't a back door, you will insist that they build one. Well, nothing is more crippling and disabling to someone than to convince them that they are an agent of somebody else's goodwill. And that has just really detached people from the standards that defines a healthy and wholesome life.
So the fantasy, it has become the reality, and the reality has become the fantasy. So you hope to see a husband and a wife, go to school, graduate, come together, get married, and have the baby. That's the abnormal, not the norm. And until we go into the neighborhoods, they only have themselves. The blind leading the blind.
What Shirley does is she brings people in. She recognizes that once a person is an addict, the whole family is addicted. And so she welcomes not only individuals, but families into her ministry.
I came here through a domestic violence situation, and we were moved from hotel to hotel.
Well, all of a sudden, one day I was laying in my bed, and I just started hearing voices coming to me, saying to me to kill myself.
She gives them an opportunity to remove those demonic forces in their life and replacing with something that causes them to walk in a new light.
I wanted a change in my life. I wanted to make things better for her because I didn't want to lose her.
In order to give hope to people, you got to first give help. As Cesar Chavez once said, feed the people, then ask questions. So she feeds the person, and then she satisfied that deeper need that they have for meaning in their lives.
She showed us so much love and so much understanding that we have never received before.
And she provides a context for that to happen. She provides a place for them to physically live. She provides a series of relationships that surround the person. And these relationships are from people who are witnesses themselves that transformation is possible.
Rock bottom was being homeless.
Heroin was a totally different story. And I was trying to medicate the pain.
We sitting there with 12 people with machine guns. They're sitting there with 12 people with machine guns, and we're sitting there looking at each other like who's going to try to do who.
Real love says, let me show you how to survive. Let me show you how to make it. Let me show you how to be happy. Let me show you how to do this.
I mean, for somebody to take me in and don't know me and treat me like a son.
Day by day, I started seeing change in me.
The whole time I was working, I would come home and I would give her my checks. And I told her to use them how she wanted to, however she needed to do to feed the people, whatever, because I was living there. She saved all my money, so me and my wife, when we got married, we were able to get rings. We were able to have our wedding.
People are not treated as a client.
We deal with potential. That's what I look for. What is your potential.
That's right.
Not your performance. But what is that potential in you that's untapped?
God used her to break a hardness off of my mind, off of my heart. I was very nasty. You better not have said nothing out the way to me. I mean that literally. You better not have said nothing out the way to me.
Dignity is bestowed upon a person when there is reciprocity. What Shirley does is help restore people by convincing them that they have got a contribution to make to others.
I share with them where I came from, what I went through. I don't care if it's on Capitol Hill to underneath a bridge.
A lot of girls that see you that come in here with domestic violence, they're crying. They're crying. And the only thing I can do is hug them. You need someone to talk to? I'm here because I've been through it. You know, I've been through it where I lost everything, but I've gained it back.
That enables them to live a healthy and wholesome and productive life.
I've been through so much. I've been through from hotel to hotel, through hospital to hospital. But I know that I'm here for a reason and that nobody can stop me.
The largest, the most diseased part of the body draws the strongest antibodies.
So let's put the money where it works. Let's not keep doing what we've been doing because we know it doesn't work. We know the food stamp system doesn't work. Does it help some people? Yes, it does. But we are talking about the inordinate of amounts of people that it doesn't help. So now you have to revamp it because what worked 50 years ago doesn't work now. And so you put resources behind solutions that do work. The problem is the money is not going into the places that it should.
The very fact that it's such a controversy now, and it's getting so bad, it means that there's going to be a backlash against it. Only the backlash is going to be an innovative, independent cure that comes from the people suffering the problem.
You have to have solutions that work. Don't give a man a fish, teach him how to fish. That's what I did at Graceview. It used to be drug dealers. It used to be heroin addicts. Every building sold something. And when I got there, I kept breeding positiveness. And as I started speaking it and started fixing up the property, I started working with the people. You're staying on welfare and not going to get a job. That's not acceptable. We give you the pieces that you need, and then we move you on, monitor you, and we keep taking them in. And that's the only way you're going to be able to get rid of the cancer.
We are going to really abandon 50 years of failed policy to embrace a whole new paradigm of helping the poor, where the people who are suffering the problem are the centerpiece of this renewed regeneration.
And as you keep applying the chemotherapy, you keep applying it until all the cancer cells are gone. Now, the abnormal becomes the normal, and what was normal becomes abnormal. And we as America, we should provide that. What's a life worth?
This is the actual original Outcry home. Before it all started. These doors are actually where thousands upon thousands of people had just walked in and had their lives just completely transformed. We're talking about drug addicts, alcoholics, people addicted to prescription medication, pornography, every addiction you can imagine has walked through here in all ages. We had a sign here up on top that said, expect a miracle. I think that's kind of the key to what happens is people come in with no hope and hear the testimony of God changing people's lives, and I think that's where the miracle begins. It all begins with a step of faith, you know? 78237. It's one of the worst zip codes in San Antonio. Infested with heroin addiction, crack addiction, meth addiction, gang violence, drug-related crimes and murders. We're on the front line of the war.
What drugs did you tell me you used? How long have you been using?
Since I was 18, I'm 25.
What are you doing out here tonight?
Working, trying to make more money to get my drugs.
There's a spiritual emptiness that we all have, and we look for the answer in different things.
I've been taking beer because it hurts.
Addiction does not discriminate. It has no respect of people, of families, of cultures, of social status, of economic status. Addiction is everywhere.
You said you use drugs too, Roman? How long have you been using drugs for?
33 years.
How long have you battled alcoholism?
I've been drinking since I was about 11 years old.
We're having people of all races who have lost a sense of content and meaning in their life because we keep promoting self-indulgence.
We tell young people, you know, this rapper or this music celebrity or this television personality, this is the American dream. This is what you should strive to. Out of 5,000 young boys in a neighborhood, only one of them is going to get the superstar contract. So what happens to the other 4,999?
I made a decision in my life at the age of 17 that I would join the Mexican cartel.
I desired the things of the streets.
At 16 years old, I hadn't even graduated high school. I was already a straight cocaine addict.
It's all smoke and mirrors, and it doesn't exist.
It just opened a whole other door to a whole other world that I didn't even know.
Success in these neighborhoods is defined by how many women you sleep with, how much money you make off drugs, how much prison time you made, how many people you kill. We've sold our young people a lie, and they're killing themselves to try to achieve it.
For 24 years of my life, crack cocaine always brought me down to my knees.
And that's the state of America. We've gotten to a place where addiction is in every family, in every neighborhood, in every city. And so we believe that we have the answer, and we have the hope. And that's why we do what we do. And hope isn't a wish. Most people think hope is a wish. Hope is faith that God, and belief that God can change someone. And so even if you come into the home and you don't believe you can change, we believe. And Jesus said all you need is a mustard seed of faith. It doesn't take much. You don't got to have great faith, you know, small faith, but in a great God. There's 4 pillars at Outcry that we implement. Love, supervision, authority, and discipline. Outcry it ranges from a 90-day program to a 6-month program. And we'll house them, we feed them, we clothe them. Our services are free, 24 hours a day. We serve almost 300,000 meals a year. These people, all they've been doing is being told that they won't make it. Where you been, man? Honestly?
Yeah, I got a spider bite on me and then, you know, jacked up, drinking all the time. I gotta get off the street.
Look a little glassy out right
Yeah. I just woke up. I don't know. I was in class. I came to get some medication and I drank a beer.
Outcry isn't a rehab. Outcry isn't a center. Outcry isn't a facility. Outcry is a home. People come in and you're not a client. Family.
In this place, Joe, you're gonna have a new family. We're all your family, Joe. We love you, man.
That's why you can always come back. That's why there's always hope. You ready to go?
Yeah, I was in the ministry, almost 4 years with you guys.
On and off.
Remember you and your mom?
Out about a solid 4 years.
You and your mom said, the next time I do this, you're gonna shake my head or something like that.
I am, so that's where we're going. Come here, Rob. I get to see men and women that walk in with absolutely zero hope in life, that truly believe that they're going to die drug addicts, that truly believe that their life is over. And one of the first things that they experience here is love. You're all right. You know they take care of you.
I know.
All right, take care. I don't care if Lloyd leaves 50 more times. He can come back 51 times. You know why? Because I believe that maybe that 51st time, it's the one moment. Shower him up, haircut, clean him up, please. He'll be a new man. And feed him.
All right.
Alrighty?
All right, come on.
This is actually our intake office where people come in right off the streets.
How long has it been since you've been clean?
I have to shower in about 2 weeks.
We'll give them a hot meal.
Hey, Lloyd, if you're still hungry, man, let us know, bro.
ex-addicts will give their testimony and share with them what God has done in their lives. This is where the journey begins.
Nothing is more powerful or credible than a witness. The man who's been to prison who can then turn to 20 young men who are headed there by saying, I've been there. I can tell you that's not the place you want to go.
Because when I was out here, Romac, I wasted 8 years of my life, man, on heroin.
The power of a testimony is what validates the power of God.
Father,
Lord,
in the name of Jesus,
in the name of Jesus,
I ask you
to
to forgive me for all of my sins.
for all of my sins.
Wash me
Wash me,
and cleanse me
cleanse me
with your precious blood.
with your precious blood.
We want to impart life to them.
When you're here, it's totally different. Here I feel safe. Here I feel tranquil. Here I calm down. I don't have crazy thoughts in my head. But as soon as I walk off this property, oh man, I turn into a totally different person.
I can talk to you about Outcry's numbers, Outcry's data, Outcry statistics, but there's nothing like you walking with me and going, here's a junkie on the street. Let's bring him into the home and let you see the transformation. You were just shooting straight heroin or speedballing?
No, just straight heroin.
Yeah? When was the last time you shot up?
Just a while ago.
Yeah.
Earlier when I was out there.
Okay. Can we pray for you?
Got your back, Lord. I saw you yesterday, man.
Did you see me yesterday?
Yeah.
Where?
I was going to the hospital, and I seen you.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What was I doing?
I don't know, but I heard your name. I prayed for you, man.
Thank you.
I prayed for you to come back. I surely did on my life. Charlie Brown don't lie.
I know you don't lie, brother.
The majority of our work is actually character development. Taking their whole set of values and saying, okay, let's deprogram that and let's tell you what Jesus says about how you treat people and how you are with people, how you react to people. One of the keys that we do here, you notice down here, is what we call caregiving, another one. And you see the man in the white shirt here. He was a drug addict before, maybe 6 months ago. God transformed his life, and now the next step is to help others. So
I was a 16-year drug addict, man, and I came into the Outcry home from Austin, Texas, and I actually walked over here. It took me 3 days.
The entire time?
Yeah, I walked about 80 miles, and I came here willing to make a change, and ever since I've been here. So, I caregive. I help out wherever help is needed. I even go to the streets, go to under the bridges, and let the drug addict know, that we found the answer, which is Jesus Christ.
When did you come in?
Last night.
Last night? You just came in on your own?
Just came in on my own.
What drugs are you doing? Shooting it? Let me see where.
Just shooting me.
Right here? When was the last time you shot up?
Yesterday.
Daytime or night?
Yesterday in the morning.
Yeah. Hanging in there?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Outcry is all about relationships. We build relationships with people that are not going to last 90 days while you're in the program. They're going to last for the rest of our lives. Is that all right?
Yeah, we're all right.
And sleep?
I gotta get some sleep. I haven't slept good in so long. It's just so good to be back, man.
Yeah, man.
I'm so thankful.
You look better.
Huh?
Look better.
Well, I'm gonna shave, but I started to shake a little bit, so I didn't want to take a chance and cut myself. I shave later on. But I feel all right.
Cool. See you in the morning.
Okay.
We'll be here.
Okay, brother. I love you.
I love you too, man. Be safe. God is raising up a generation of people, young and old alike, that I believe are going to create a ripple effect of change that will begin to heal the nation. I really believe that with all my heart. And the movement has to do with people.
A lot of people are dying.
Pride will make you fall.
You want to come to the home? There's space, there's room.
Not right now.
Not right now?
No.
And a lot of people on the street, that's all they have left. They don't have a job, they don't have a home, they don't have anything. So the only thing they have to hold on to is their pride.
I know I can't weather the storm by myself.
You don't have to die a junkie. You don't even have to live a junkie.
And that's how we take that step of faith.
And we see it every day.
And you know that thing that you feel in your heart, Romac, you know what that is? That's the Holy Spirit, man.
So the question is, What's a life worth to you? What's your country worth to you? What's America worth? I still believe that we have the capacity within our own nation to heal ourselves.
There's a small group of patriots in these high crime, drug-infested neighborhoods that are equipped with the moral and spiritual armor that it takes.
I'm so grateful that I'm not a drug addict anymore.
So now I go out to where I came from, to the streets, to under the bridges, to the crack house.
For the younger guys in the neighborhoods that was gang banging.
The man holding a sign asking for help, but really reach out to the guy who threw that sign down.
Their lives serve as a living witnesses that restoration and redemption is not only possible, but achievable.
Our success isn't based on how many people we brought in. Success for us is this: how many people have left the home and are still drug-free and back working with their families. You want to see a miracle? You see that guy right there? That guy used to be a heroin addict for 20 years. He's no longer a heroin addict. He's a businessman who loves his family, and he's serving his community.
We need to harvest that. We need to understand it. We need to resource.
We've done 100,000 in San Antonio. Can you imagine what we could do in New York, Florida, California, St. Louis? Put me on the same starting line. I guarantee you we'll see a change in this country.
Complete freedom starts from the inside. If you think of Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, or Nelson Mandela, who was in jail 27 years, they become prototypes of the reality that our freedom is not defined by our external circumstances. Real freedom is having come to the conclusion that you are not your circumstances and that you redefine your future from the inside out. Life is full of restrictions. However, life is also full of options. So if you focus on your restrictions, then you complain your way through life and you see yourself from the perspective of deficits. But if you celebrate your options, then you see your life as a sequence of opportunities. Our job is to convince people to pursue the opportunities and thus overcome the restrictions. I grew up in what you might call a fundamentalist Christian home. By the time I reached my teen years, the civil rights movement was at its peak. All of the racial sensitivities and the frustrations of the moment in 1968 came to a head, and I became a student activist in my school around racial issues, fighting for both student rights and racial justice. When I was in college, my passion for racial uplift, particularly among black people, was threatened by the use of drugs by black students on our college campus. And I, along with friends of mine, took the position that drug use would undermine any black progress that we made. The drug dealers were absolutely livid and decided that they would kill me. So they kidnapped me from my room, took me on a ride to a vacant lot at 5:30 in the morning to kill me. Just miraculously, a police officer saved my life. It was during that season after my kidnapping, I came to the conclusion that Jesse Jackson was the new Martin Luther King. By 1973, I had introduced myself to him, convinced me to hire me on his staff, and in 1974, I went to work for him. In 1975, I was the national director of his organization. By the mid-1970s, I noticed even a larger shift. The drug problem had gotten exponentially worse. The race problem was really subordinate to black-on-black crime. It seemed that the values of the black community had shifted drastically, and black organizations, black families were weaker, not because of exterior forces, but because of interior weaknesses. And I felt a growing contradiction between what we were doing in terms of reacting to explicit signs of racism versus what black communities needed, and that was solutions to internal problems. To be on welfare meant that you were poor, needed some help from the government, but you couldn't have a husband. And if you had a husband, they'd cut off the benefits. By 1989, Dr. Samuel DeWitt Proctor at that time was the pastor of the Abyssinian Church in Harlem. He was mentor to Martin Luther King Jr. He was not only my professor, but my mentor, and he lived in Somerset, New Jersey. And this church became vacant. And Sam Proctor said, I have just a guy for you. Here I am, a businessman, I'm ready to conquer the world. And I said to Dr. Proctor, I can't go to this church. It has nothing. And he said to me, if guys like you don't go to churches like that, what will happen to our people? And it just kind of grabbed me. I said, listen, I can stay here forever as long as the enthusiasm of Sunday morning spills over for the empowerment of the neighborhood around the church. So we embarked on a mission. And the execution of that plan has now resulted in over $500 million of new investments in this neighborhood. We have 2 new parks. We have 1,000 units of affordable housing. We have a new high school, a new supermarket, a new elementary school. And the plan that the church created became the plan that the neighborhood then expanded on. And the plan that we created as a neighborhood became the official plan of the municipalities that we sit in. So there's been a preservation of what was strong, a replacement of what was weak, and we filled in a lot of gaps. One of the principles that drive our work is the principle of social entrepreneurship. The programs that we've institutionalized have been in a couple of key areas. The first being foster care and adoption. We find around the country that some people are attracted to foster care just to get the check. The pipeline to prisons is in large measure coming out of the foster care system. They are moved from house to house. They often are angry because of their environment. By the time they're 18, they're like ticking time bombs. We decided to go after the foster care industry and partner with the state of New Jersey. We have a fee-for-service enterprise. It's a business. We now recruit families to become foster parents. We train them, the state licenses them. Then we maintain a network of foster homes so that anytime a child is in need of foster care, the state calls us, and then we place the child.
Not only do we place them, but we service the homes that they're in. So once a family becomes licensed and they take a child in, we don't go away. We become a part of a family.
See, that's the added value of having a community-based grassroots organization partnering with the state, because that context can protect the child in ways that the state just doesn't have the resources to protect. It saves the state money, it spares the prison system of likely prospects, and it provides a permanent solution for a child. So rather than wait for the state to reform the prison system, we cut off the market by rescuing the kids ourselves. That's social entrepreneurship. When we first engaged with the state lost more foster families every year than they got. Whereas our retention rate on average for the last 15 years has been around 90%.
We've licensed over 435 homes for children. As of today, we've placed over 1,275 children in loving homes. We have over 275 children who've been adopted. Unfortunately, those children were not able to go home, but they were already home.
If a church or a faith-based organization or a mosque or a synagogue can provide a service, even though it may have religious strategies, as long as it has secular outcomes and it's cost-effective and it complies with the law, then the government should feel free to contract with that entity without regard to its religion. The second principle that drives our work is limited government. We care about people so much that we don't want them to be restricted to government as the only option to get on their feet. Is there a role for government? Yes. But the role should be defined by the people solving the problem and not by the philosophers who simply analyze the problem. And the reason this neighborhood is transformed today is because government cooperated but did not take the lead. We took the lead. We defined the vision, and government played a limited role, but an important role. Even when government does not do what we'd like to see government do, people can bring about the change themselves.
In and out of jail, over 15, 20 years, strung out off heroin and cocaine, over 20 years. Went to a couple of drug programs, didn't work. I keep losing my job. I was working body work over here, painting cars over here, working for this car wash over here.
There is a role people must play in their own uplift.
And from the car wash, with no water in the truck, with a station wagon knocking on people's doors, I just kept going. Inch by inch, everything's a cinch.
And when you go around the country and look at the people who are the unsung heroes of our urban centers, they always insist that people take responsibility for their own improvement, their own healing.
I gotta start my own business. Jasper's mobile car wash is taking off.
So our debt-free movement is based on personal responsibility.
The job of D-Free is to really to get people to realize that they're not their bank accounts, you're not your money, but it's what's going to help to really elevate your life. It's really addressing the psychological, spiritual, mental, and emotional aspects of the way we handle our money. Taking what our behaviors look like and applying it to practical financial principles. You're eliminating debt, you're paying your bills on time, making sure that you're increasing your net worth, and then taking those savings and transitioning it so that you can start building a future.
I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it.
This culture of immediate gratification, it eats away at our financial capacity because we want it and we want more than we can afford as quickly as we can get it, and thus we use the credit card.
This country and the world, money is it, period. You're being sold 24 hours a day.
The culture of thrift that used to be normal in this country has been replaced by the culture of debt.
And we've internalized a lot of that, and our behaviors reflect that we're being sold.
The reason we tolerate government debt the way we do is because we have our own debt. So if I'm in debt and you're in debt and the state's in debt and the Fed's in debt, it doesn't even offend us that we owe more money to China. In fact, one fella told us on tape one time, he said, well, of course I'm in debt, it's the American way. Our culture was at one point built upon what we called the Judeo-Christian ethic. And that ethic is grounded in principles. Those principles are foundational for the free enterprise system. They're foundational for our political system. You cannot have a sustainable society without core values based on the principles that the founders understood.
Have we lost those values?
No, we've lost them. We don't even remember having had them. We are now raising a generation for whom those values are foreign. Integrity, honesty, truth, discipline, thrift. That was a core principle in our society until the last 30 years. There is a devolution of principles that result in chaos, violence, confusion, and poverty. They are social enterprises led by grassroots organizations that are very close to the people who have need, which, if supported and empowered, can help people who otherwise would be stuck in poverty. And that ethic of service is what we've tried to build into our work here.
My dream is to put 20 vans on the road, get these boys off the street, and start something crazy.
It's what Darryl builds into his work in Indianapolis. It's what Jubal builds into his work. Freedom is helping someone else become free. That's civil society. That's the village. That's what Dr. King would call the beloved community. It's America.
A transformed heart needs busy hands and a full stomach. It's not enough to tell them what not to do. You got to tell folks what they can.
We're going to spend a few minutes just talking about the success that was portrayed here so well. And what I love about these episodes that Claire Burns, videographer, did is that they really capture the diversity of the projects that you've worked with over the years, transforming lives. But they're all kind of based on a similar philosophy, and they often have some key ingredients of the kind of people that are leading them, who've had some of the experiences that they're now trying to warn others against. So can you kind of summarize what you've looked for in groups that are having this kind of success?
Well, when we first started the center the first 10 years, we were doing it to pursue social justice for the poor. But then to deepen our understanding, to answer that question, we set about a 2-year tour of 7 regions of the country, and we invited grassroots leaders in from a 200-mile radius to ask them questions that they're seldom ever asked, and that is, what works and why does it work? And what we discovered is that the groups that came to these gatherings at hotels, several things in common. The first was the leaders always sat in the back, and they always sent the fruit of their experience, of their work, to represent them. And what we found after gathering all these experiences, they said faith works. And some friends of mine warned me that on this journey, that it was going to alter not only the organization's trajectory, but my own personal life. And so at the end of 2 years, 90% of the people said faith in Christ works. Some of them, and so what we did was we collected all of the best practices, and then we invited 150 of these leaders to come, because we chronicled and tried to define what we learned from them, but we didn't trust our own assessment. So we brought down 150 of them together and shared with them our summary of what we thought we gathered and learned from them, and asked them to respond to it. And then after having gone through that process, it was clear that the principles that define them, that's what we call the Joseph principles. We found that real legitimate organizations live in the same geographic zip code, they're in the same cultural zip code. They did not start as a consequence of funding, but they made investment on themselves. They also made a lifetime commitment to those they served. And we also found that the qualities that make them effective also makes them invisible, because they're not whining or complaining or protesting. They're busy serving. And so there were other kinds of principles, but the magic sauce was they served by example. That a witness, they recruited people who witnessed to other people, and it was just love but that seems to be the magic sauce. That they are people of stellar principle, and Michael Novak described it one time. I invited him to come to a 4-day retreat, and at the end I heard him say to a friend, what I have learned that Bob's people are not sophisticated enough to be deceitful.
So faith really is such a prominent feature in almost all these stories. I think all of them, actually. And that's intriguing to me, because it kind of gets shut out of the Washington, D.C. public policy conversation.
Well, most people left and right of center, Jennifer, attempt to change policies by manipulating incentives or sanctions. And what they fail to understand is that you cannot generalize about the poor. You've heard me say that there are 4 categories, that there are people who just broke. But there are characters in place. And for them, they will respond to incentives and sanctions, and they use the welfare system the way it was intended, as an ambulance service and not a transportation system. The second category are people who look at the perverse incentives. As Buster said, if they get married, they're going to lose benefits. So they ran the numbers. Their character's intact. You just got to change and alter the incentive systems, and they will be all right. You got a third category of people who are physically or mentally disabled, and there are some areas in there where we encourage people to define themselves as being disabled. And that needs it. But then the fourth category is the one that concerns most of us, and these are the people who are poor because of
poor decisions that they make. And for them, giving money or programs, they're not going to respond to sanctions, incentives, that they must undergo character transformation, redemption, transformation, as a precondition for any incentives to or sanctions to apply. But too many of us assume that by altering incentives and sanctions, it will compel a moral change in people. Whereas our groups understand that first we must inspire people to change and become transformed and redeemed. And once the redemption transformation occurs, then programs work. And that's what's missing right now. We invest, all of our experts are experts at how to manipulate the incentives and sanctions, and on the assumption that it's going to have moral consequences of changing the moral behavior of people. And they don't understand that you must start with this population of people. So all of our grassroots leaders serve in this film and the center. We almost concentrate exclusively on Category 4. These programs operate in the highest zip code, the highest poverty, the most drug-infested, the most crime-ridden. And so no one can accuse them of creaming.
We're live streaming this, and it'll be available on video archive on our website. But in a few minutes, I also want to give opportunity to the people who are with us in the audience, particularly because some are from outside the country, to interact with you and ask their questions. But before that, let me just ask a couple of questions that have to do with the intersection of public policy and the kinds of projects that you're involved in. Like I said, the public policy conversation sort of excludes the significance of faith, and in this space, as in many others. In the education sphere, we've become accustomed to the idea that parents should, or we're getting more accustomed, we're not there yet, but we're getting accustomed to the idea that parents should have the opportunity to choose a safe and effective school for their children, including religious options for that. And those have proven very successful, particularly in inculcating values that reflect the parents' hopes for their children and the kinds of ethic that'll make them succeed in life. Couldn't that same sort of voucher approach work in the social services areas? And we've kind of experimented a little bit in drug treatment, I guess, but couldn't we go further with that?
Well, I think so too. I think in terms of public policy, I don't agree with even my colleague Paul Ryan that it's sufficient to just devolve responsibility from the federal government down to the state, down to the city. I think that city governments are just as messed up and as anybody. That's why I've been a strong advocate of devolving responsibility directly to individuals and to families. That's why when George Bush was president, we fought for charitable tax credits, and that it was giving taxpayers the option. I guess about 70% of all taxpayers have about a $300 to $500 tax liability every year. And lower income people tend to give a higher percentage of their income to charity than the wealthy people, which means that if you were to permit each taxpayer to write off $100 of their tax liability, donating it to a nonprofit in a high crime, drug-infested neighborhood, it will create a market so that the people whose children are being serviced by these programs that you see here will also be influential in determining how they operate. That's the way the market operates. We can create a market situation where if the program isn't serving it, it won't last. And so then our grassroots leaders, instead of having to apply to the federal government, they can appeal to the customers to fund their program, and so
allowing them the choice.
Allowing them the choice. So yeah, I think we should take voucher rise, and most of those programs that they're talking about block granting, I think we ought to take it and find creative ways through the tax system to devolve more money and control into the hands of these organizations in these communities. We used to have, in several states, a community service tax program where corporations in states could write checks to in high crime neighborhoods and get a tax credit. And those worked very well. It was very simple form you filled out, no bureaucracy there. And so there are schemes like that that work, but I think we ought to concentrate in terms of reform is how do we devolve directly into the hands and to the purses of people suffering the problem so that they can provide service to their own people.
So one of the areas that there have been challenges is even in government actually creating problems. I'm thinking of the Texas regulatory system that got, was it Freddie's outcry?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell that story?
Yes. What we had in the, some years ago, I got this harried call from the head of Teen Challenge. They're like 3 or 4 major providers of faith-based drug and alcohol treatment programs. Teen Challenge, Youth Challenge out of Hartford, Outcry in Nevada that has, Freddie's and his ministry has about 100,000 people throughout. They have 70 ministries all over the Southwest and other countries. Well, the state of Texas sent their regulators there and said, for about 3 days, they said, you all are doing it better than anyone we've ever seen, but you're doing it the wrong way. What do you mean by that? Well, you don't have professional licensed therapists as counselors, and also you're allowing ex-drug addicts to counsel drug addicts. And we think that that violates the state's regulatory system, and so therefore they threatened to close them down. So Freddie called me and Teen Challenge said, Bob, we know about drunks, we don't know about politics. Can you help us? So I called Clint Bolick and Chip Millar at the National Institute of Justice, and they immediately mobilized and began to prepare a suit. I went to college with Ed Bradley at 60 Minutes, and I called Ed and I said, look, I don't expect 60 Minutes to do a show, but at least call there. Say, this is Ed Bradley from 60 Minutes. I want to talk to you about this little problem you have there. So Ed did that, and so that helped. And then that's street stuff. That's how you take street hustling and you hustle in the suites. So then my good friend that I used to debate all the time, Bill Raspberry, I got Bill interested. So Bill actually called and got the facts from the regulators, and he actually did a column about it. So then George Bush was new governor, and I asked to see him, and even Jeb could not get me in to see him. So we had a demonstration on the Alamo. We had 300 saved drug addicts saying, let my people go. We wanted the state of Texas off our backs. Well, Ben Kinchlow from Christian CBN came with a film crew. Marvin Olasky put us on the cover of World Magazine. And then the networks got a hold of it after this buildup of publicity. And then next thing I know, I got an invitation to come to Governor Bush's office, and David Caprera there was with me. And we sat there, and he says, I didn't know anything about this problem. What can I do? So you know what a governor does, and he set up a task force. But we had a chance to appoint all the task force members. And within 6 months, Governor Bush signed into law exempting all faith-based groups from state regulations. But this was the deal we cut. Our groups got the other side to back off when our group said we didn't want any state money. We just want you off our backs. So the other side said, okay, fine, we'll sign off on it. And that's how we did it, because we were not looking for state subsidy. All we wanted to do is have the government off our back. And so that was the foundation of the President Bush's, Governor Bush became President Bush, of his faith-based initiative. That's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, that's, Jennifer, that's how it happened. But so when we're talking about, it's not enough to advocate or talk about what the other side is doing. When these groups are in trouble, they ought to be able to pick up the phone and know who to call so that we can then mobilize, as we did, Ed Bradley, Bill Raspberry, the National Institute of Justice. It should be a team always prepared to defend some of our groups when they're being attacked like that.
Right, and religious liberty is becoming
And religious
increasingly
li-
important in this anti-poverty space, undermining it.
But we ought to get as upset when it applies to somebody in this high crime zip code and not people who are not living in those communities. You know, we always do it in terms of church. One other strategy that I think we miss when we're talking about religious liberty, one of the ways that we can recruit people to this is like in the people of Buster talking about adoptions. We're talking about gay marriage, okay? In that struggle, the state of Illinois and Massachusetts abandoned, because the Catholic Church were required to put adopted children in gay homes, they decided to shut down. Well, we should have been recruiting, going to these black adoption agencies and to the people in the community like Buster Soaries and others who had a proprietary interest to make them, help people to understand that it isn't just an abstract religious liberty. It has a secular consequence of denying thousands of black children an opportunity to grow in homes. And so when the NAACP and the Urban League sided with the gay rights movement, we should have been confronting them to say, are you now going to place those children in who won't get in adoptive homes? So we ought to recruit people that have proprietary interest in the consequence of having a policy in place, instead of argument as an abstraction. To most people, religious liberty is an abstraction. But when you can make it concrete and explain to people how it has a direct and concrete consequence of adversely affecting a very vulnerable population of people, then you can recruit more people to your cause and have a real coalition.
Yeah.
But we don't do this.
This is a really important aspect of the child welfare discussion right now, and very important what you're saying about making it concrete as the children affected. I want to, before I ask any more questions, I want to see if there are any questions here on the floor. Ms. Robert, we have if you'll speak into the microphone, that'll help with the audio online.
Well, you know, Bob, we've had this history on the tax credit. You may remember about 15 years ago, I drafted a bill for then Congressman Talent, the Community Renewal Bill. And the center of that was a tax credit. It was very similar to that, and we were going gung-ho on that. But then we got to realize that for most people on the left and most, quote, private charity, their idea of anti-poverty activity is to lobby for a bigger government welfare state. And so at that point, we put in a provision in that bill that said this has to be used for direct service. It cannot be used for advocacy for public policy change. And the world blew up. And that was the end of that bill. Not so long ago, by our perspective, I think, how do we get around, how would you get around that problem? Because, that you remember just all hell broke loose when we put that limitation on that credit.
Well, we drafted a bill with Mark Souder when he was in Congress, and he was co-sponsored by Bobby Scott, one of the most liberal congressmen. And this was clean, and it went to President Bush, and Karl Rove and then pulled the bill and instead used the money for death tax. And Dana Milbank, who's just moved here, the Washington Post, liberal columnist, reporter, or no, columnist, I guess, came to me and said, Bob, why did the Bush administration bail on that when we had an absolute consensus in the Congress? Bobby Scott and Mark Souder, but they bailed on it. And so we had that same provision. But No.
Lack of political nerve. David Caprera?
Thank you, Jennifer and Bob. Bob, two-sided coin question. I noticed the quiet Ryan standing behind you and even praying in San Antonio and some of the other places. What can and should new Speaker Ryan do? I know when Dick Armey and Jack Kemp and others, you brought study committees out to highlight these models. How can they use even the bully pulpit as much as legislation? And Jubal, the power in that presentation of Jubal describing the transformation of America, you've often talked about a moral brush fire. So the second side of the question is, what would you like to see as far as igniting that on a larger level, the way Jubal talked about as a moral brush fire to build critical mass in this country?
Well, first of all, I can't say enough about Paul Ryan's commitment to this. He went on this tour with us after he lost the election, and there was no political advantage. Just like Jack Kemp, there was no political advantage for Jack Kemp to pursue public housing resident management. He did it on principle. Paul did the same thing. But character is revealed in small things that people do. The very fact that lost the election was over, and I brought these grassroots leaders to meet with him in Ohio, about 20 of them. And within 2 weeks, he sent them all a personal card thanking them for their contribution. And then he went on a quiet tour. And I think what Paul did is listen, but he's also asking us at the center and others to help advise him as to what the anti-poverty agenda should contain. So he's still asking us, and that's what we are working on right now. And that is a whole different way of looking at poverty. And our strategy going forward, David, is not going to be engaged in another round of debates with anybody. We're going to apply what we call the Joe Louis principle. Joe Louis fought at a time when his opponents were racist, the judges were racist, and so were the fans. So Joe Louis said that when you're faced with overwhelming odds, do not trust your fate to a decision. Knock the sucker out. That's what we're going to do when it comes to whether or not these policies of empowerment have the consequence of changing communities. So we are going to go to 5 cities in America where we're active, identify the most violent, drug-infested, crime-ridden zip codes. And then we're going to mobilize our grassroots Josephs in those communities, give them the proper resources that they need and the guidance that it takes to come in and dramatically improve civil order there. Because we're not going to have a comprehensive plan. What we want to do is get at that you must control civil order. Unless there is peace, unless you can confront the violence, and you can do nothing else. Once we've done that, we're going to take some of these initiatives like the foster care and adoption, the debt-free. We have many of our men and women coming out of prison who can't find jobs but are generating jobs through small business development. And so we're going to be promoting a number of taking the principles that work in our market economy and apply it to the social economy and invest heavily in demonstrating to people, as we're already doing in our violence-free zone. We can go into the most crime-ridden, drug-infested school and reduce violence by 25% in 3 months. Well, we think that if we can do that inside of those school buildings, we can also do it in the communities. We've demonstrated here in Benning Terrace, as you know, Dave, 18 years ago, when we had 53 murders in the 5 square block area. We went in and it wasn't a gang murder for 12 years. Well, if we did it in a situation like that, so what we're now is recruiting the resources so we can demonstrate to the American public that these principles of empowerment, that the grassroots leaders that you saw in this series, they are our new patriots. They are the ones who are going to demonstrate that the principles of our founders can fundamentally transform and improve the conditions in the worst situations in America. And then we'll do what Joe Lewis did. We'll just put the rest, people who are saying or want to argue with us about whether empowerment of the poor work. We'll say, like Joe Lewis said, look at that fella down there and to ask me if I can beat him. Yes, we can beat drugs. We can beat fatherlessness. But we've got to come up with fatherlessness. There are enough men to be surrogate fathers to these boys and young women. They're already, so what we're doing is recruiting them to become surrogate fathers and rebuilding these communities. Because people are inspired to improve when we give them a vision of what's possible. But as conservatives, all we emphasize is injuries to be avoided. Who wants to follow someone who's telling everybody to avoid injury? You can never win a game with just a defensive strategy. You got to have some offensive plays. And so what we are proposing in moving forward is to demonstrate through our actions and mobilizing these grassroots, Joseph, with the proper resources that America can improve from the inside out and the bottom up. Final word on this, Americans are thirsty to support the virtues of our founders. In evidence, when you know about this, there were 5 situations where a homeless man up in Boston, 46 years old, he found a knapsack, a backpack with $46,000 in it. He turned it into the police. As a result of his picture being flashed on Facebook or one of those social media, they raised about $93,000 in just 2 days. There have been 4 or 5 situations like that. That says to me that Americans are thirsty to support virtuous behavior. But no one is giving them an opportunity to support it. And we hope by going to our cities and recruiting business leaders and people of wealth who also want to see and support real change, that we'll give them an opportunity to invest in situations of restoration so that America can return to its glory.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bob Woodson, for giving those opportunities through the Center for Neighborhood Enterprise. Thank you all for being here. And if you liked what you saw here at the Comeback series, it's available online to share with friends and family at opportunitylives.com. And will you join me now in thanking Bob Woodson and joining us for a reception outside?